Good evening, race fans, and welcome here to race number 6 of the 4th season of the Dark Horse Racing Series as we get ready to take to the second road course stop on the schedule, Watkins Glen International. Seth Cole, alongside of Matthew Rodriguez, as qualifying currently underway, and Matt, obviously here today, maybe one of the more speedy road courses that we're going to this season. 7 corners, pretty short, but no doubt about it, I think we're going to be seeing, at least early on, a lot of pack racing.
Absolutely, and this track really kind of gives you that blend of nice kind of short road course action with a lot of tight turns, but also kind of those long straight and speedway elements. I mean, these guys are getting up to about 185, 190 on that back straightaway going through the boot, and then doing that hard right-hander into the carousel, and that's going to probably cause maybe a few incidents today.
Right now, Polo Hernandez sits atop the leaderboard with a 54.137. That's almost a tenth and a half over second place Eric Schaus, who almost won this event last season. Fuel was not his friend last year, and now he actually drops to third with Bennett jumping up there to the top. But 61 laps here today. That obviously seems like an odd number of laps to have for a main event, but when you consider what we learned during the pre-race here and during the drivers' meeting, that one extra lap could be crucial because the number we've been told, the furthest these drivers can stretch it on fuel with a single car run is 20 laps. So where can you save that extra bit of fuel there for that final lap?
Well, it's really about just racing smart and, hey, making sure you stay tucked up underneath another car, getting a little bit of draft, just kind of letting them pull you. Also, avoiding push-to-passes. I mean, here's the thing, that extra 5-10 horsepower really does burn up fuel once you start hammering it for multiple laps. I mean, I have heard differing strategies from multiple guys here, but say, hey, I don't want to use push-to-passes just so I can have the maximum fuel saved to those who, they really just don't care and they want to try and pass people. So we're going to see both ends of the spectrum here and see who lucks out.
I have to chuckle because that car that you saw flipping coming off pit road, that's your pole sitter, Henry Bennett. So I don't know what was going on there. I don't know if he was going to go out there and maybe try and turn another lap or what, but right now he sits atop the board. Of course, Henry Bennett, the only driver so far this season that has won at a road course when we went to Road America, second race of the schedule. Mike Teller going to bin it there into the steel barrier off of turn 1, right now sitting 15th on the board. I got a couple other drivers that are out there turning times right now. Matt Wagner in the 11, but, you know, two things that we talked about here before we came on the air. Number one, driver that's picked up 3 wins in the first 5 races on the season, Robert Maleska, is not in the field here today, so an opportunity maybe to see possibly our 4th driver go to victory lane here in Season 4. The other thing that also I noticed here too, we're guaranteed a new race win here at Watkins Glen because Season 2 and Season 3, it was Alex Van de Sant who went to victory lane in those, and he is not in the field here tonight either.
I mean, just kind of looking at those two, I mean, Alex Van de Sant, he was fast at almost all the road courses last season. It just kind of had differing luck. But usually Maletska was on cleanup crew, but with both of them gone, it's really a toss-up who's going to take this race. Obviously, Henry Bennett is kind of looking like the favorite, just with kind of really great practice runs, really great qualifying runs. Rick Ray Vaughn, he's one of those guys who I'd be kind of keeping my eye on. And Eric Schausman, he almost won this race last season if it wasn't for a pit snafu.
Yeah, he ended up, if I recall the story correctly, he was worried about getting around a slower machine, didn't pay attention to how much fuel he had in the car, and started running out, I think it was over there in the S's, and could not make it back to pit road. So obviously hoping that's not going to be the case for him this time, as Henry Bennett going to finish up yet another lap there. But I think his lap time will still hold, the 53.993. Dylan Moskowitz out there as well, as I don't think he even was able to get a time on the board there, as the qualifying session is official, and Henry Bennett will be leading us to the green here momentarily, his second pole on the season.
You know, if I'm remembering correctly, I believe that Schaus actually ran out in turn 1 and had to tow back the pit road because he couldn't make the full length of the circuit.
Schaus, of course, would later go on to victory lane at Pocono later on that year. And it's interesting, too. Obviously, there's a lot of leagues that don't use the Dan Lisa program for their points, but for those that do, you're able to actually look and see about statistics of different drivers, different cars at different tracks. Well, at this configuration of Watkins Glen, with these Dallara DW12s, Eric Schaus actually holds the third and fourth fastest laps here at Watkins Glen, according to those stats. Another driver out of Dark Horse, Craig Forsyth, who we ended up seeing last season. Of course, he was a former Indy 500 winner as well. He actually has the fifth fastest lap here with this car at this configuration of track. So quite a number of Dark Horse representation up there as far as speed at Watkins Glen.
I mean, I was talking with Eric Schaus pre-race, and really, I think that entire Dark Horse team is kind of pulling behind him, hoping that he is going to be that point sparer today, just trying to get him back in top of the team standings here.
Now, of course, you mentioned about two guys to watch, Rick Ravon and Henry Bennett. Those two actually come into this race second and third in points behind Robert Milewska III. 21 points back for Rick Ravon, 30 points back for Henry Bennett. So they're going to gain some ground on him here today. However, we do have to bear in mind that towards the end of the season, drivers are allowed to drop a race of their choice. I would assume, more than likely, this would be the drop race for Robert Milewska III. So, while as we look at the point standings after Watkins Glen, we are going to have to maybe take it with a grain of salt, depending on which race Milewska chooses as his drop race.
Well, that's some dangerous thinking. I mean, all these drivers have 3 drop weeks at their disposal, but I'm kind of looking at it now where Milewska had a really bad finish at Road America, ended up getting in multiple wrecks, ended up having to drop out of the race. He had another bad race at Kentucky, which ended up finishing in the back half of the field. And now he's missing this race. I mean, this is already his 3 drop weeks that I can count on hand. I mean, you've got to be near perfect for the rest of the season. Just hope for no more bad breaks.
That's a really good point, because, yeah, there are a lot of tough tracks still to come. We're only 6 races, including today, into the schedule. So, yeah, very good point there. And, it will be interesting to see where they choose to have those 3 drop weeks during the course of this schedule. So far, quite a number of drivers have made every single race, so at least as far as what weeks they would choose to drop, not going to be knowing those until we end up getting closer to the end of the year, getting closer to championship week. You saw there your starting lineup for tonight's event. That's brought to you by LMCgear.com. LMC Gear is a one-stop shop for all your motorcycle camping and backpacking needs, specializing in camping gear that is ultra lightweight and compact, making it perfect for carrying on your motorcycle or in a backpack. And they also carry all the motorcycle accessories you need to get your gear safely down the road. Check out lightweight motorcycle campinggear.com today. And for all of you Dark Horse racing fans out there, you can get 10% off of any order by using the promo code DARKHORSE10. So check out lmcgear.com today. One thing that we have to bear in mind here, Matt, 2 long straightaways. Obviously, the turn 7 to turn 1 front stretch, but we could kind of call this the back stretch here, where we would normally use the chicane there. They don't use that with this classic version of Watkins Glen. So, going to be 2 very fast sections for these drivers going down to the heavy braking zone, turn right of turn 1, and of course here, the sweeping carousel.
See, I've seen some lot of different ideas for the carousel where Rick Ravon, he was one of those guys that I saw heavily braking as soon as he reached the carousel, dropping down to 3rd gear and staying just tucked of an inside rumble strip. But I've seen other guys kind of send it in there and almost do a diamond-like pattern, overdrive it, kind of arc the car and turn it midway through the corner and kind of pull out. It's going to be a kind of a toss-up on who's going to use what strategy, but I'm most worried about is collisions there of guys trying different strategies and just meeting in the middle.
Another thing I gotta wonder here too, based off of what we saw at Road America, there's maybe a little bit more runoff there at that road course. So notice a number of drivers here in qualifying. I actually was observing them in practice as well. There's not a lot of room for error. You spin off the racetrack, you're more than likely going to meet up with a concrete barrier, a safer barrier, or a steel guardrail. So these drivers have to be very careful during the course of this race as we are green at Watkins Glen. Into the heavy braking zone, turn 1 they go. Top 3, 4 going to get single file heading for the S's.
And here's the thing, you got to kind of remember, if some of these guys wreck, it's not just because of lack of experience. It's really that they're just trying to push everything they can out of these cars, but one little miscalculation, one little kind of, I didn't get my wheel exactly where I needed it, and they can hit that grass, and as soon as they hit the grass, they lose all front-end grip.
And on board here with Bronson Stafford as he's trying to track down 5th place Matt Wagner. Battle up ahead of them, Eric Schaus and Rick Ravon for the 3rd spot. things have gotten pretty settled out all the way through the field. Now all these drivers going to settle in and set up their passes. Of course, as well, we have to bear in mind, you alluded to it earlier on, they do have 10 push-to-passes at their disposal, and I would assume we're going to see a majority of them being... Oh, we got a big wreck! Eric Schaus off the final corner! He collects Bronson Stafford into the inside wall. Everyone's scattering on the front straightaway.
Looks like Teed, Stafford, and it actually looks like Schaus as well, and that's a heartbreak for him.
That was the car that got out of shape, that bright green 72 of Eric Schaus off of turn 7. I don't know if that car just got loose and he overcorrected it into the outside wall or what the case was. There you saw Bronson Stafford in the 61. He got involved.
I see it. He was trying to kind of get into that final corner. I've noticed a lot of these drivers been having issues getting into that last corner. He tried to run it exactly on the rumble strips, just kind of hit it with the front wheel, hit it with the back wheel, and that was just enough to lose all grip in the rear. Schaus did a good job of trying to keep it under control, but as soon as he hit the other rumble strips on the other side, kind of whipped that car right back on around, spun it right back into the middle of the track.
Noticing Mike Tellier back here as well. Going to observe his car, see if he might have gotten any piece of the incident. It doesn't look like it. I don't see any damage on that machine, but he has lost a ton of ground. Actually, maybe a little bit of damage there on that right front wing. Not 100% certain there. Charles Teed has gone off course, it looks like, as that is... Well, actually, he's coming to pit road.
Yeah, Teed was involved in that last incident with Schaus, and I think he was really just trying to woe up for the entire incident, ended up locking up the brakes and slid it on around. That's what another big complaint of some of these drivers, that the right front is locking up. A lot of these drivers are swapping brake bias back to the rear of the car, but when they do that, it does make it a lot more unstable under braking, and I think Teed may have just gotten bitten by that bug.
We will be going back and looking at the replay of what happened there with Eric Schaus and company momentarily. We're going to keep an eye here on the race lead battle between Polo Hernandez and Rick Ravon. These were second and third just a couple of laps ago. Around the same time that we had that incident off of turn 7, race leader Henry Bennett, I don't know if he's had some connection issues or what, but all of a sudden his name went gray. It got grayed out on our telemetry. He's not returned back to the server, and that was from the top position.
Yes, it looks like he actually ended up losing connection, and that's, again, a big heartbreak for someone who was heavily considered the favorite entering this race.
Polo Hernandez, now the top driver, about 2-3 car lengths back to Rick Ravon, who spent a good portion of not only the practice session, the official practice session, but also the earlier practice session as well, up towards the top of the leaderboard, so we know he can turn fast laps. And Matt Wagner, back there in third. I mean, you remember from last season, Matt, this was a guy that was always looming up there in the final portion of the podium, just couldn't quite get on the same zip code as Alex Van de Sant and Robert Maleska III, who always seemed to have those good battles at the road course, but he was always there.
I was really hoping you were going to bring up Matt Wagner, because, I mean, he's usually not a name that you look to at road courses to really fight for these wins. He's usually that guy who just stealthily has a quiet race, consistent race, and ends up getting really good points. But at Road America, that wasn't the case. I mean, he actually was dealing with a broken wheel that race, and he was waiting for his new wheel to come, and here's the thing, he's got his new wheel now. And right now, I mean, you've got Rick Ravon right in front of you and Polo Hernandez, and I'm thinking this is really a Matt Wagner race. If he can at least gain some consistency, some speed, he can get up there and fight for this.
Just saw Dylan Moskowitz. He was facing the wrong way, spun it out in the entrance to turn 1. Eric Schaus has finally brought his wounded car to pit lane after his incident over in turn 7. Looks like he is possibly using the faster pair, the only faster pair available to these drivers. Bronson Stafford, who's back on the track as well, has already used his faster pair at this point. A little bit surprised here. I know that when there's incidents on track, usually there's just local yellows. With that incident we had off turn 7, and a lot of drivers approaching that area and all darting left and right to avoid, maybe a little bit surprised that a full course yellow didn't come out at that point in time.
Really, that's up to the discussion of race control, but again, usually they like to keep it green where strategies can really play out. And again, on a caution on lap 1, that could change a lot of strategies here, and you could kind of derail a race idea here, because that one lap can be so vital.
We're going to drop back here as the field's gotten somewhat spread out. That battle for the lead is still close, but we do have to take a look here at what happened back on the final corner of the first lap here with Eric Schaus. He was running in the 3rd position at the time. He had Rick Ravon all over his back bumper there, going through the final couple of corners, and You alluded to it there, Matt. Just got those right sides on the rumble strip. Never was able to get the car to make the corner the way he wanted it to. I don't think anybody hits him, but everybody else scattering to avoid. Teed and Bronson Stafford, obviously, they made some contact with either the inside or the
pass
outside
for the
walls.
lead. Rick Ray Vaughn looks like he's taking over Polo Hernandez on the long straight. He's going to get him into the carousel. Looks like Hernandez got a little bit loose.
And I didn't check to see, but he might have used one of the push-to-passes in order to be able to make that move. Ironically enough, right now, Rick Ravon, only 7 laps in, is already 3 push-to-passes deep.
So here comes the eternal debate about where you really use push-to-passes at. I mean, here's the thing. I'm kind of in that crowd of I want to use up all my push-passes at the beginning of the race when the field is all close together and kind of fend out for myself later part of the race, maybe just kind of hold out. But a lot of these guys, they're kind of in the, I don't know if I want to use push-to-passes just because maybe I'm not familiar with this track, or just a part of I want to save fuel. And then some are just saving push-to-passes for the end of the race to make a final, huge charge. I've kind of heard differing opinions on push-to-passes today.
This is interesting. Look how Polo Hernandez is going to stay alongside of Rick Ravon. He utilized the side draft to stay alongside him. Rick Ravon, actually, to edge ahead, used another push-to-pass right there. So he didn't gain a whole lot of an advantage, and he's now down to 6.
But here's the big issue. You saw when we were going to that carousel. Ravon was one of those big users of trying to take advantage of the entire track, going all the way from the far side and then arcing into the carousel. With Hernandez just putting his nose there, that really prevents Rick from doing that, knocks him off his line. Again, just keep doing that a few more times. You have issues like this where he kind of gets so thrown off, maybe just get into his head a little bit, and you just see Polo just passes him.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly what happened there with Rick Ravon. I don't know if it was they just messed up turn 1 there, or we did have a car up ahead of him. Oh, got an incident here. That's, I believe, George and Zaldo. That's off of turn 1. Waiting to return back to the track, but I don't know if maybe Eric Schaus, if that might have, he was ahead of the 2 race leaders. I don't know if that might have played a factor into Rick Ravon. Oh my goodness. Messing up turn 1 as he just barely cleared that front wing of Polo Hernandez out of the carousel.
And see, that's the big thing. You got to kind of think, hey, while the tires are still good, you're obviously going to try to attack, but kind of in the idea of whenever you have a lap car in front of you, of course it weighs into your mind because you're trying to pick out where you want to pass them. I mean, you kind of have the 100 scenarios going through your head of, man, I really hope I don't pass them here. I mean, I really hope I pass them here. I really just hope they let me by. And it just shoots you in the foot so much if, hey, you catch them at a wrong time or they're running a lane that you want. I mean, a lot of these leaders, they kind of expect their professional, kind of preferred line going into a corner. But again, some of these lap cars, they have a right to fight for their position.
Absolutely. As you saw, Eric Schaus now falling a lap down to the race leader, Rick Ravon. He and Bronson Stafford -1. Henry Bennett, by the way, has not returned back into the servers, so there's only one other driver in the field that has been to victory lane so far this season. That, of course, was last week at Kentucky. Nick DeGroot, currently running in the 5th position. So unless DeGroot's able to find a little bit of more speed here, get himself up to the front of the field, looks like we could very well have the odds in favor of a 4th different driver going to victory lane here today.
I mean, with that win last week, you heard it in his interview. DeGroot just sounded pumped. He sounded more excited. And that's a huge departure from last season where, at the end of the season, you just kind of had a defeated Nick DeGroot. He had almost lost one of these races in every way possible and just had a down year. But, definitely being able to have a good win, obviously good start to the season. That is huge for him. And here's the thing, he was, at least how I remember it back in a few other leagues that we broadcasted, DeGroot was a feared name on road courses, and not so much in Dark Horse, but he seems like he's getting back there.
Yeah, definitely does. And, when we talked with him last week as well in Victory Lane, he said, I'm not really expecting to come to Watkins Glen and win that race, but I know that we can run at least up inside of the top 5 and get as many maximum points as we possibly can just based off of what I know my abilities are at road courses. And right now, up there inside of that 5th position, just behind Eric Peterson in the 36. Good run so far for him.
Oh, that was you better find some wood to knock on.
I know. I was just thinking about that because, all the hard luck he had last season. Hopefully I did not jinx him just there, but still, very good run for him. And keep an eye back here as well. 6th and 7th, the Brooks brothers, Jim and Gale, because I was actually noticing in practice these drivers are very good. They put down good, consistent lap times, and these two have been on a roll as of late, too. I don't know what it was that the two of them found from Season 3 now to Season 4, but they have found speed, they have found consistency. Right now, Gale is 5th in the points, Jim Brooks is 8th in the points. Of course, Jim almost went to victory lane a couple of weeks ago back at New Hampshire. Oh, we got another car up in the wall. That's, I talked about him. I talked about him. Are you kidding me? Eric Peterson.
And it looks like he missed his braking point. I'm kind of looking at that, and looks like maybe he got no touch of the grass. It just maybe he missed his braking point or had his brake bias set incorrectly, but I mean, when we were talking about Nick DeGroot's troubles last year, I mean, take that, times it by 10, and apply it to Eric Peterson. Man didn't get his first top 10 until about the end of the season.
I swear I knocked on wood. Peterson's coming to pit road in that 36 machine. This is well before a scheduled stop. These drivers are going to try to at least make it to the completion of lap 20. To be able to try and be within the range of making it that final extra lap that they started this race short of. Right now, these drivers could go a maximum of 20 laps, and I double-checked as well, because I remember last year when we were crunching the numbers at Watkins Glen, they made it, I think it was about roughly 20 laps on a tank of fuel when they were in draft with each other in the beginning portions of the race. Then when we got closer to the end of the race, they were pitting about 15 laps into a run, and I was trying to figure out what the case was. You alluded to the fact that when you've got draft, you're able to save more fuel. When you're spread out, you're consuming more fuel. So I double-checked just to make sure that that number that we were given, that 20 laps, is a single-car run. So we know that these drivers, at least for the time being, can make it to lap 20 and to lap 40. The question is, though, can they make it to lap 61 without having to come to pit road one more time?
You know, actually, going back onto your point about Jim and Gale, I mean, obviously the Brooks, kind of the father-son duo there, they have just been happier this season. I mean, I've had a chance to talk to Gale a few times, and Gale just seems, top of the world. I mean, he seems happier this season than he did last season. I think that's really paid into kind of his successes and his consistency here at the beginning. And obviously for both of them to be in contention for that win at New Hampshire a few weeks ago, I mean, that almost just fueled the fire. I mean, obviously there's a few heated feelings after New Hampshire, but I think either one of them's really, I'd say, has the best chance to get a win this season.
Yeah, and even Gale Brooks ended up playing some strategy in last week's race at Kentucky. Was out in front for quite a number of laps and ended up bringing it home in the 4th position. So, yeah, definitely seeing that both of the Brooks, they have definitely turned up the heat as far as competitiveness. They got a car on pit road. I'm assuming this is unscheduled for the 7 of Gary Corley, and yeah, the damage that I could see there on the front wing area, looks like that's around the right front. That says to me that he's gotten into trouble at some portion here.
Just take a look back here, and it actually looks like he spun into 1. Kind of that same issue. A lot of drivers have been having issues on the exit of 1. And it's kind of gotten worse as you've gotten more longer into the run. Obviously, with the tires wearing out, especially the rear tires. Looks like he just got on the gas way too early. Didn't even really hit the rumble strips and spun it around. He's lucky he didn't break the suspension on that car, but obviously the wing being damaged, not a good day.
That's one thing that I observed during practice is that rumble strip there over in turn 1. It seems like drivers it gets really slick with the back end of the car when they get up on that.
Yeah, and it kind of has differing feelings here. I mean, some of the guys who obviously wish iRacing would definitely go and rescan this track up to the more accurate version, because they would love to, I probably would guess, to more accurately use that extra runoff as extra space to race. But there's some that, I mean, here's the thing, they're just trying to push as hard as they can, and they just end up touching that rumble strip, and the car really just bottoms out when you get the middle of the car over that rumble strip, and it just makes it so undrivable, and you have to let off to let the car catch. But in a race scenario, when you're racing someone side by side, that's not the first thought that goes through your head, and evidently it ends up turning some of these guys around, and that tire barrier outside of the pit exit typically is your first landing point.
Dylan Moskowitz driving away from the incident there between himself and I believe Eric Schaus off of the exit of turn 6 between 6 and 7. Both drivers continue on. Moskowitz going to lose quite a number of spots and actually got lapped as well by Rick Raybon. So right now with the pace that Rick is laying down, we've only got 9 drivers on the lead lap. He also lapped Mike Tellier and also lapped Gary Corley, who was just on pit lane.
You know, I went ahead and took a look at that Moskowitz incident. Honestly, it looks like he was really just trying to push on braking and see if he could push his braking point out farther. Ends up just pushing a little bit too far. Unfortunately for Schaus, when Moskowitz spun, he kind of just did a stationary spin and just started spinning in the racing line. Schaus decided to go into the kind of the gravel to avoid it, but obviously unfortunate.
And here at the closest battle on track, and this is for the 4th position, Nick DeGroot, that green machine of Jim Brooks. He has been getting bigger and bigger in his rearview mirrors. Last time by, Jim Brooks ran a little bit more than a 1/10 of a second faster than Nick DeGroot, and his pace has been consistently faster these last 3 laps.
Absolutely. And he's still looking throughout the field, trying to see who I can really pin out of a lineup here. Oh no, Jimmy Drynan spinning around the exit of pit road.
And also another car looked like might have possibly had a slight issue. 6 of George Anzaldo was slow at a portion there, but looks like he has been able to continue on as well. He is the next car that Rick Raybon is going to be catching. And I want to take a look at one of the cameras we've got here. It's a cool camera that shoots back looking at the driver. And watch the head movement here on Rick Raybon. I mean, that thing is bouncing back and forth. It is not an easy ride around Watkins Glen at all.
Yeah, this track is one of the bumpiest in its current configuration. Without the repave, I mean, a lot of these bumps going down into the 1, a lot of these bumps on the back straightaway, they just unsettle the car so much. You see Raybon going into the pit road this time. Polo Hernandez is staying out.
Now, this is at the completion of lap 19 for Rick Raybon. So this says to me that he's not even thinking about 2-stop. He's going to have to absolutely make 3 stops here in this race. Polo Hernandez, on the other hand, if he can make it around to the completion of lap 20, he as well as Matt Wagner, those two, they're thinking about possibly saving that extra lap of fuel and only making this a 2-stop race.
I mean, kind of, you had to look at Rick's race thus far. I mean, he has been really pushing hard, really aggressive in this race. I would not be surprised just getting fresh rubber on it and, honestly just trying to see if you can make up spots that way rather than trying to stretch it on fuel, maybe having to slow down more. And especially he has been on the push to passes the entire race.
That's what I was going to ask you, because if you look at the guys that stayed out, Polo Hernandez, Nick DeGroot, Gale Brooks, none of these drivers have used a push to pass yet. Wow! I don't know who that was that Polo Hernandez cut right in front of. I think that might have been the 6 of George Anzaldo, but man, that was close.
And I got to think, I mean, I did not hear Polo call out pits at any time, so to be honest, George was in the right. He was giving him the racing line, but I mean, you got to be a little bit more vocal about that stuff.
There's Polo pulling into his pit stall. Watkins Glen, one of the unique pit roads with the fact that at least if you've got a pit stall up near the front, you're actually facing downhill. So you have to use maybe a little bit more brake to get into your pit stall than you'd be used to, as Nick DeGroot's going to stay. Now, this is interesting with DeGroot.
Gary Corley blocks Rick Raybon. And you got to think, he's on fresh tires. He's trying to make the most of it. And you've got these cars, and that's what I'm telling you, that these lap cars can easily change the race for some of these leaders.
This is interesting, though, with Nick DeGroot, because he's going to make it 21 laps here on this first run. Could very well here on the very first stint have saved that 1 lap of fuel that he needed to make this a 2-stop race.
He might be able to. Obviously, the kind of that nice line graph goes here to how much fuel you saved versus how much time you're losing by saving said fuel. So it's going to be kind of a toss-up here. I think the undercut's going to be pretty strong.
Well, Raybon, I don't think is going to be able to make it on 1 more pit stop. I think he's going to have to be to pit lane 2 more times. Another number that I was actually given pre-race is if you come to pit road 32 seconds or higher ahead of the driver behind you from the race lead, you will leave pit road more than likely still the race leader. But if the driver that's trying to chase you down when you hit pit road is less than 32 seconds behind you, you're going to lose that race lead.
I mean, we could easily kind of see it with how some of the pit lane times have gone thus far. Man, it looks like Jimmy Drynan's currently still on pit road. Looks like he was getting some damage repaired, but I mean, here's the thing. We see 31.2, 31.2, 31.9. I mean, a lot of these guys are just getting on and off the pit road quickly, but really what would really help out Rick's strategy is he pits. You got Polo 32 seconds behind him, and here's the thing. Rick would come out on fresh tires, and Polo would still be saving tires, so that's an easy kind of a walk-away win for him. I just don't think it's going to be that easy.
You just saw Bronson Stafford. He was trying to fight to get back on the lead lap, but he now has to come to pit lane. That's a regularly scheduled stop for him. Mike Tellier coming off pit lane as Polo Hernandez has his hands full with the lap machine of Gary Corley. That's allowing some drivers to start reeling him in. Matt Wagner a little less than 3 seconds back, so if the 7 continues to give issues here for second place Polo Hernandez, we could have a battle for the runner-up spot in our hands in the next couple of laps.
And see, here's such a big issue about lap cars where, I mean, here's the thing, you don't want to hold up the faster guys. I mean, unless you're kind of in the points battle, but you don't want to hold up the faster guys. You want to get them out of your way just so you can kind of focus on your race. But here's the problem. When you're trying to get out of someone's way, I mean, unfortunately, with this being a road course, the non-preferred lane quickly turns into preferred lane, hey, less than a few hundred feet down. So by not getting in their way, you're unfortunately getting in their way.
You notice that green machine behind the car we're focused on, Polo Hernandez. That's Henry Bennett. The pole sitter has finally gotten back into the server, albeit 16 laps down. Good news is he's back in the race. The bad news is up to this point, all 16 drivers ahead of him are still on the track, still running, so there's nobody 24 laps in that's out of the race for him to be able to pick up positions on just yet.
Yeah, and that's the thing where I think he's really just kind of hanging around, seeing if anyone drops out, but again, this is kind of a points recovery day. This will probably be one of his drop weeks, but if you can try and avoid it being a drop week, or hey, you could even have a worse week than this, and I know it's kind of hard to say, but you can have a worse finish than this, you want to try and gain all the points you can just to salvage as many points as you can.
Well, some drivers are going to have to make at least one more pit stop in the upcoming 20 or so laps. Others may have to be at pit road 2 times before the completion of this race. You're looking at the battle here for 4th place between Nick DeGroot and Jim Brooks. We're going to step aside for a quick commercial break. You're not going to miss a bit of this action as we're going to go up and side by side as you're watching our coverage of the Dark Horse Racing Series presented by Troy Lee Designs.
Welcome, race fans. This is Paul Page, the voice of IndyCars. And today we're excited to present another IndyCar event brought to you by the Dark Horse IndyCar Series. From the Unzers to Mears, Foyt, and Andretti, now it's Corley, Peterson, Davies, Gardner, and Teague. You can expect high speeds, incredible wheel-to-wheel action, and intense drama that you can only get in an IndyCar. So sit back and enjoy your favorite drivers from all over the world take the track. Dark Horse IndyCar drivers, start your engine. Welcome, race fans. This is Paul Page, the voice of IndyCars. And today we're excited to present another IndyCar event brought to you by the Dark Horse IndyCar Series. From the Unzers to Mears, Foyt, and Andretti, now it's Corley, Peterson, Davies, Gardner, and Teague. You can expect high speeds, incredible wheel-to-wheel action, and intense drama that you can only get in an IndyCar. So sit back and enjoy your favorite drivers from all over the world take the track. Dark Horse IndyCar drivers, start your engine. Welcome, race fans. This is Paul Page, the voice of IndyCars. And today we're excited to present another IndyCar event brought to you by the Dark Horse IndyCar Series. From the Unzers to Mears, Floyd, and Andretti, now it's Corley, Peterson, Davies, Gardner, and team. You can expect high speed, incredible wheel-to-wheel action, and intense drama that you can only get in an IndyCar. So sit back and enjoy your favorite drivers from all over the world take the track. Dark Horse IndyCar drivers, start your engine.
You're watching FRN's coverage of the 6th race of the season for the Dark Horse Racing Series presented by Troy Lee Designs here at Watkins Glen, right on board with second place Polar Hernandez, who is about 4.2 seconds behind our current race leader, Rick Ravon. That battle for 4th place, though, continues to rage on. Nick DeGroot, Jim Brooks, they have been no less than 5 car lengths between each other for the last 3 or 4 laps.
And Jim is not letting DeGroot out of his sight. He is really trying to track him down, but he may be aided by the lap cars in front of him. Obviously, Stafford kind of had that issue at the beginning of the race, has not had, I'm guessing, the ideal race in his mind, and he's another one of those guys you got to look at for those drop weeks. Again, I think he had that wreck at, trying to think of what track it was. He obviously had the wreck at, I think it was Chicagoland, if I'm correct.
Yeah, I think it was.
Yeah, that big wreck at Chicagoland that took him out. There's also the issue at last week in Kentucky, my apologies, that he actually ended up getting into another wreck. And this would be just yet another drop week that possibly would have to get factored in. Again, 2 of the, I'd say, really championship front runners at the beginning of the season, they're really kind of in risk here, both Miletzka and Stafford.
And right now, Rick Ravon leading this race. He's been very consistent this year, even though he is still chasing his first trip to victory lane. 21 points back, second in the overall standings coming into this one. His finish at the first road course race, Road America, was a podium, 3rd place, but he is a guy right now that's looking like the one to beat. But before we went to break, we mentioned the fact that he came to pit road at the completion of lap 19. The drivers, we were told, could go as far as 20 laps. So right now, just based off of calculations, if he came to pit road here 20 laps into this stint, he would still be 2 laps short of making it to the finish.
Absolutely. I'm just kind of, I don't know how much I agree with this strategy. Like, obviously, he kind of made his bed when he first started out the race and really started pushing aggressively, but I'm not sure about this. I mean, even if you're doing a 3-stop strategy, I mean, right now you're only pulling about 4 seconds away from Polo, and I mean, Polo is coming and he is fast, and I don't see how many how many push passes he's used, but again, it looks like Polo is trying to run that conservative race, but also you got Matt Wagner behind, and Wagner is still within that kind of 10-second gap. If you want to get to 32 seconds, you'd have to look all the way back to DeGroot and Brooks, who have about a 35, 36-second gap from the leader.
Yeah, right now, Rick Ravon would be about 2 laps short. Polar Hernandez and Matt Wagner, they have to find a lap somewhere here. Maybe on this day. Oh, wow, Matt Wagner just went around a slow car. Was that High Song? The 18, yeah, he had an issue off the final corner.
It looks like High Song ended up, he kind of had those, that forbidden entry into a 7. Ended up driving just a little bit too deep, getting back on the brakes, locked up the rears, slid the rears around into the tire barrier and just pulled it on the pit road. But definitely kind of a bad break for High Song, who was doing really good at the beginning of the race, gained 8 positions from his start. Obviously, he's dropping down the field now, but, you know, hey, it's kind of one of those knock-on-wood moments, but he was doing really well.
He was running in the 8th position at the time of his incident. You got Eric Peterson coming to pit lane, the 36. This is a regularly scheduled stop for him as he's off sequence after being on pit lane earlier to repair damage. But going back to the point I was going to make, Wagner and Polar Hernandez, they've got to find a lap somewhere, maybe on this stint or on the final stint, to make this just a one more stop race for them to the checkered flag. Nick DeGroot, though, at this point in time, looks to be the only driver that could make it on just one more pit stop because he stayed out that extra lap on the first run.
So I kind of like the genius behind that, but I've seen how much it costed him. I mean, look, about 32 seconds, and again, that kind of golden number of entering pit road, about 32 seconds. I'm kind of flipping it around in my head, like, yeah, I mean, he may have an extra lap of fuel, which could help, But I mean, how much is that 1 lap of fuel going to help?
Yeah, here's the thing. Rick Ravon, if he does come to pit road, he is going to be roughly, right now, according to scoring, about 23 seconds ahead of Nick DeGroot. The question is, would he be able to make up said time to reel the 89 back in if the 89 does not come to pit road in the closing stages of the race? So that's what we're going to have to keep an eye on, is the interval between the 89 and the 2, because we know Rick Ravon, he is fast. He does still have 6 push-to-passes left as well. He used 4 in the early stages, but he did not exceed half of the number given to these drivers. And, boy, this is a wide here. That's Jimmy Drynan just ahead, Henry Bennett just behind, lap machines all around the race leader.
And you got to think, it really takes away his line where, I mean, again, Rick was really kind of utilizing the entire track and the carousel, and, you know, having to fight these cars, that is just ticking time off his lead. As it looks like, come to look at it. Yeah.
Off turn 7. That's a number of drivers. Eric Schaus, I believe, is in the middle of that. I'm trying to figure out who that car is coming to pit road. That might be Song again.
Yeah, it looks like Brooks was
Jimmy Drynan spun it off of turn 7.
Yeah, that was Brooks, Schaus. Who is that? That actually is, yeah, Song once again. But I did notice there was a lead
playing havoc with a lot of drivers.
My apologies. There was a swap for second a while back. It actually looks like Polo Hernandez ended up spinning it into 1. It didn't hit anything, but obviously lost position to Wagner. Now Wagner is P2.
And currently running, I believe it's now 9 seconds. Yeah, 9.5 seconds behind the race leader, but still, to your point, up in the runner-up position. And that's something we'll have to keep an eye on, is the interval between Wagner and Nick DeGroot as well, because, as mentioned, DeGroot at this point in time looks like he could make it a 1 more stop, but Wagner could very well make it the rest of the way on just 1 more pit stop also. And he's running less than 10 seconds behind the race leader, so this race could play into the hands of the driver of the 11.
You kind of really have to look at, again, that's Polo Hernandez, and that's the biggest thing that really bites some of these road course guys at these road courses, where we just kind of get maybe too focused on the line, too focused on that number of chasing, and end up just making these small mistakes. And I mean, if you're looking at Polo versus Rick, I mean, Polo is using the entirety of turn 1, almost jumping the kind of a nice little rumble strip they have there, trying to get a little bit extra speed, a little bit extra room. But by doing that, he's unsettling his car every lap. And here's the thing, you can get lucky 35 times, but all it takes is that 1 time on lap 36 to kind of knock you around.
Gil Brooks, we just saw hitting pit lane. This is about 6 laps too early to be coming to pit road to make it on just 1 more pit stop. So not certain about this off-sequence call for the 71. We'll wait and see how it plays out, though. Gale has fallen a lap down back to the 9th position.
Well, Gale also has damage. I kind of understand that. I mean, it's better just to bite the bullet right now. Go ahead and take that fast curve. Just get yourself back up to speed and take the lap loss.
That makes sense. I didn't realize the 71 had damage, so that would actually answer for the earlier pit stop. Actually, in terms of fast repair, there are a lot of drivers that have used them at this point in time. The highest running of them is Eric Peterson, up in the 7th position. Also, Bronson Stafford, Gale Brooks, as you just alluded to, using a fast repair. Jeff Heisong, Eric Schaus. They have all used fast repairs in this race, and I'm going to assume that for some of these others that we know have run into trouble but have not used their fast repairs, they're probably going to use it on their final pit stop.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, you just kind of want to make sure your car's all set to go, because, I mean, with this being a road course, the likelihood of a caution obviously goes way down unless, you know, there's a track blocking incident and it takes everyone. I don't expect a caution to be called. So might as well, for that final run, if you think you have any damage, even if you don't think you have any damage, might as well just take that fast repair, go ahead and put it on the car, and then just make a beeline to the kind of end and hope that you don't hit anything.
Bronson Stafford, I think, may have had an issue there. He was really slow down that backstretch area heading for the carousel.
Yeah, it looks like he got really unstable under braking in the carousel. Ended up just kind of losing the front end of the car. Ended up kind of doing a smart move. Go ahead and just go straight, kind of collect the car. But when he did that, he lost grip in the rear end. Just spun it around, but it was one of those flat spins. Stopped about on the outside of the race line in the corner and just ended up continuing on.
Bronson Stafford was up in the top 3 in points for a good portion, the first 3-4 races of the season. things have started to go a little bit south for that 61 machine last week after Kentucky. Well, Mike Tellier right ahead of the race leader with an issue. A teammate to the 61. So Rick Ravon having to adjust a line there off the exit of turn 1, but Stafford dropped 2 spots after the hard luck of Kentucky last week, now to 6th in the standings. And I've been keeping an eye here, Matt, on the lap times of one Matt Wagner. He got around Polo Hernandez. Hernandez, last couple of laps, has been running about in the 54.5 range, high 4s, maybe low 5s. Wagner is running in the 54.8, sometimes low 55. So that says to me, he's backed his pace down. He's trying to save that extra lap of fuel that he would have been short of. He's trying to save it on this run.
Absolutely. It looks like the 97 of Mike Tellier ended up retiring from the race. That's going to be our first DNF of the race. But honestly, look back at that incident. It is just kind of the same textbook thing we've been seeing all race of, some of these guys just carrying too much speed in the one and then just touching that rumble strip on exit just enough to ruin that kind of the grip of the rear tires, spin him right on around to that tire wall at pit exit and almost collected the leader.
Rick Ravon and Polo Hernandez on pit road from 1st and 3rd position. And this is coming to the completion of lap 39. So this says to me that Polo Hernandez could find himself in the same boat as Rick Ravon, possibly 2 laps short of making it to the finish. Matt Wagner going to inherit the lead. If he can make it one more lap after this, this would put him right on the cusp, right on the window of this being his final pit stop of the day. We'll see if he ducks to pit road this time or if he stays out for an extra 2.45 miles.
See, I'm I'm still throwing that around in my mind, and I don't know if it's worth the risk almost. You see Wagner come on the pit road. Really, the person who may be in the best position here is the group. But again, that risk versus reward. The group did stay out that extra lap. He did save a little bit extra fuel, but look how far he is behind the leaders. I just don't know if it was worth it.
Yeah, see, here's the thing. Right now, he is running in the 4th position, has not pitted yet. And Rick Ravon, Polo Hernandez, they've completed their stops. They're already down and away, and they're still ahead of him. So even if the two of them have to come back down pit road and top off the fuel tank,
Moskowitz.
That's Schaus?
I believe that was Moskowitz. Let me take a look back
Gale
here.
Brooks. It was Gale Brooks, the 71.
Oh, and he took out his front wheel too. It looks like Gale's ended up parking it here.
Bronson Stafford, I believe. Also, I don't know if he got involved or if he was slowing to get to pit road. And Dylan Moskowitz in the 4 also on pit lane.
Looks like Stafford maybe saw the incident coming up ahead, tried to brake a little bit harder than he usually does, ended up sliding it, didn't hit anything again, but he definitely not a comforting sight.
And Gale Brooks is now out of the race as well, so based with there being more than 20 laps to go, these are 2 positions, Mike Tellier's DNF and Gale Brooks now in the garage area, that Henry Bennett will pick up. So while obviously it was looking like it was going to maybe be a Rick Ravon versus Henry Bennett battle here today, and Bennett getting hit with connection problems, falling multiple laps down, 15th is better than 17th in terms of points gained.
That's multiple guys in our top 5 who, top 5 in points that really have had a hard hit today. Obviously Maletzka not showing up, that's going to hurt him tons. Henry Bennett, obviously having those issues, being back in the pack now, that's not ideal for him. Then you've got both Gale Brooks. Just saw what happened to Gale Brooks. That's P5 in points. P1, P3, and P5. It's not a good day to be an odd number, but that's really big points implications.
Yeah, it definitely is. Now, go back to the point I was going to make there before we had that Gale Brooks incident off of turn 7. Rick Ravon has inherited the race lead back again after we ended up having Matt Wagner hit pit lane. Nick DeGroot is still yet to come to pit road. He might be on pit lane this time by, and he is. He's in 4th. He is 3 positions behind Rick Ravon. He's going to lose time on this pit stop. Rick Ravon, who, in my calculations, is still short. He could still come down pit road in the closing stages, just top off the fuel tank and be down and away before Nick DeGroot even gets around. So what was looking like possibly the 89th race, all of a sudden this has shifted over to the 2. However, let's also remember Matt Wagner, he pitted 1 lap later than Rick Ravon did. He's less than 10 seconds, 7.7 seconds behind Rick Ravon.
Polo Hernandez, he almost ran into the back of Wagner.
And that's battle for second place there, but First it was looking like the 89, then it was looking like the 2. All of a sudden it's looking like it's Matt Wagner's race to lose.
Absolutely, but looks like Polo is pushing hard, trying to get past Wagner here. He wants to go and try and fight Rick Ravon here.
And I'm wondering if you're Matt Wagner, if you let the 0-1 by, because right now Wagner is 1 lap better on fuel than Polo Hernandez is, and you see him run wide there through turn 1. I think that was by design to let Polo Hernandez use up his stuff, use up his fuel. Right now he is also projected 2 laps short of making it to the finish.
I mean, you got to think, let him burn up his stuff, let him go and hopefully race Rick, and let them both burn up fuel trying to fight each other and just kind of stay back here. Now, I'm not saying for Wagner to kind of lose a bunch of time like the group did, but as long as he stays in here, he may have a really good shot at making this.
Charles Teed coming down pit lane. This is potentially his final stop of the day within the 20 laps to go window. Best battle on track right now really is for that second position, but we saw it exchange hands, so I'm not necessarily certain it's going to close back up again. Wagner on Hernandez.
Yeah, that was a really good recovery from Peterson, already to P5, and we're going to find some wood to knock on around here.
I was going to say, did you knock on wood this time?
But obviously, that is a great recovery for him, but going back to last season, the results that he had last season did not reflect his racing last season. Obviously, went up there, led races, fought for wins, and it never failed. Every time just something happened and it took him out of contention.
This is obviously the first full-time season for our top 2, Rick Ravon and Polo Hernandez. Matt Wagner, in the last 2 times that Dark Horse has run here at Watkins Glen, only took part in last season's event, finished in the 3rd position. The only driver coming into this race that's finished in the top 5 in both the Watkins Glen races, he's up in the 4th position right now, Nick DeGroot. He ended up finishing 3rd here back in Season 2, 5th back in last season, Season 3, and looking now for a trifecta of top 5s at the Watkins Glen International.
Absolutely, just got to look at it. Some of these guys you obviously have kind of circled on your list saying, yeah, we're obviously going to be good at some of these road courses, but definitely a strong showing from the new guys, both Ravon and Hernandez.
Obviously, right now for Rick Ravon, looks like he could be the points leader heading into next week, which is going to be at Homestead Miami Speedway, but Nick DeGroot also looks like he could be moving up through the standings. He was only 41 points back, 4th in the standings coming into this one, of course, after his victory last week at Kentucky.
Yeah, I'm just looking through the field here and trying to get a good gauge on the guys who are obviously going to lose a lot of points today. Henry Bennett, one of those guys that I know is going to absolutely lose points just being so far down. Now, he probably will pass Tellier and possibly Brooks before the end of the race, provided that neither of them come back in to finish throughout the race. But still, a P15 finish, not good for him. Still looking down the field, Matt Wagner's really kind of in a position to have a really good day, whether he finishes 3rd or 1st. Really great day for him. Still looking down the field, obviously Polo Hernandez, whether he gets 1st, 2nd, or 3rd, it's going to be a great points day for him.
Another driver I just noticed that wasn't in the field here today, which is a shame. Very good road course racer, Jim Herrick, driver that we're used to seeing up inside of the top 5 to 7 week after week at the left and right hand turns. Had a good run last week in Kentucky, which moved him up into the top 10 in the overall standings, but he did not take the green flag here tonight either. So a number of our top contenders for road course racers were not in tonight's field here at Watkins Glen. Rick Ravon, though, continues to show the way. 14 laps to go here at Watkins Glen. Possibly final pit stops for some of these drivers coming up. Others might be trying to stretch it to the checkered flag with what they've got in the tank. We'll be coming back for all the closing stages of this race and see who's going to be able to take the 6th checkered flag of the season here for the Dark Horse Racing Series. We're going to step aside for a quick commercial break. You're not going to miss a bit of the action. We're going to go FRN side by side.
Welcome, race fans. This is Paul Page, the voice of IndyCars. And today we're excited to present another IndyCar event brought to you by the Dark Horse IndyCar Series. From the Unzers to Mears, Foyt, and Andretti, now it's Corley, Peterson, Davies, Gardner, and Team. You can expect high speeds, incredible wheel-to-wheel action, and intense drama that you could only get in an IndyCar. So sit back and enjoy your favorite drivers from all over the world take the track. Dark Horse IndyCar drivers, start your engine. This is Paul Page, the voice of IndyCar. And today we're excited to present another IndyCar event brought to you by the Dark Horse IndyCar Series. From the Unzers to Mears, Foyt, and Andretti, now it's Corley, Peterson, Davies, Gardner, and Teague. You can expect high speeds, incredible wheel-to-wheel action, and intense drama that you could only get in an IndyCar. So sit back and enjoy your favorite drivers from all over the world take the track. Dark Horse IndyCar drivers, start your engine. Welcome, race fans. This is Paul Page, the voice of IndyCars. And today we're excited to present another IndyCar event brought to you by the Dark Horse IndyCar Series. From the Unzers to Mears, Foyt, and Andretti, now it's Corley, Peterson, Davies, Gardner, and Teague. You can expect high speeds, incredible wheel-to-wheel action, and intense drama that you could only get in an IndyCar. So sit back and enjoy your favorite drivers from all over the world take the track. Dark Horse IndyCar drivers, start your engine.
Ten laps to go was hit last time by here at Watkins Glen as Rick Rabon continues to show the way here at Watkins Glen International, but Polar Hernandez has been cutting down that lead. It's now down to a second between those two, and as we've been observing here, a lot of drivers up inside the top five have really backed their pace down, a lot of them running in the low to mid 55 lap times right now. Hernandez is not one of those drivers. He is in full go mode right now.
Mm-hmm. And obviously Polo is really just trying to push the pace because, as Seth kind of mentioned somewhere under commercial, it looks like Rick had been kind of backing down his laps, just being more conservative to save fuel, but now that Polo's really right on Rick, he really needs to start pushing. Notice his last lap time was a 54.828. Polo's last lap time was a 54.577. Now the biggest thing that could really kind of put a bolt in this strategy would be Polo over driving a corner like he did last time and kind of spinning off in turn 1 or turn 11. That could be a big hit to this. But right now, Matt Wagner's just kind of crossing his fingers, hoping that Polo's going to run Rick as hard as possible, and they're both going to be out of fuel.
And Wagner has really backed his pace down as well. I think at this point in time, he would be able to make it the rest of the way to the checkered flag with what he's got in the tank. Rick Rabon, as mentioned, was saving. I'm not necessarily certain if he was able to save long enough before he's going to have to hold off this challenge from Polar Hernandez, because he was anywhere from a lap and a half to 2 laps short based off the calculations that I have. Now, he has been running around quite a bit of traffic as well. I don't know if maybe getting a little bit of draft off of some slower machines or some drivers on the tail end of the lead lap, if that might have been aiding him on this run or not.
See, now you kind of get that interesting mind game because they both pitted on the same lap. So they're both wondering if they both have enough chance or have enough fuel to make it. That's the big question that they're both wondering is, do we have enough to finish this race? Because obviously he seems more confident than I do. And Wagner's over there, hey, he's 1 lap to the good, so you gotta be wondering if some of these guys, if I can make it, are we sure?
We saw Rick Rabon move way to driver's right into the draft of Bronson Stafford before slingshotting around him to put him now 2 laps down.
I'm not sure how much that helps.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe a little bit. Maybe a minute bit. Who knows? But if you keep an eye on the telemetry, 13 seconds now. 13.4 seconds. Matt Wagner's distance to Rick Ravon. And again, that 32 seconds, the 32 seconds on pit road that I was talking about is if you came down pit lane and didn't stop at all. That's just the amount of time spent from commitment line to commitment line on pit road. That does not count the amount of time that it would take for these drivers to complete a pit stop, which I would assume if any of these guys up here at the front come to pit lane, it's going to be just fuel only. Don't bother taking the tires. Just get as much fuel as you need into that tank to make it to the checkered flag and then down and away.
I don't know. If I were them, I think I'd want to take tires. Yes, it would add a few seconds onto my time, but you got to think I'll have about 20 lap fresher tires than anyone else if I could just go as hard as possible. But if I was going to make that call, I would make that call about now or about 2 laps ago where, I mean, listen, I can go drop down, get just enough fuel to top off, and just go as hard as possible and hope I can pass a lot of these cars before the end.
More traffic up ahead for the race leaders to have to deal with. I believe that's Charles Teed, who is right now the last car 1 lap down in the 9th position. You know, he brought up an interesting fact about last year's Watkins Glen race. Only 3 drivers finished on the lead lap in that event. Right now, we've only got 4 drivers on the lead lap here at Watkins Glen.
Yeah, and we may still finish with 3 drivers. Make sure you don't jinx it, but, I mean, definitely a little bit more competition this season than we saw in previous.
A couple of drivers have actually moved up into the top 10, been having very solid outings. We mentioned about Eric Peterson, but how about George Anzaldo? I believe he has made his final pit stop of the day, and he has worked his way up to the 6th position. So very good run there for him, a driver that we really haven't seen much of this season.
I mean, look both at Teed and Stafford. I mean, great recovery after that kind of first lap issue that we thought would just completely derail the race.
And see, that's the thing, too. You run into early issues at a road course, the likelihood of a full course yellow is slim to none. So the remainder of the race is all about minimizing the damage. And yeah, that's exactly what both of those drivers have been able to do. Great comebacks for both of them, who ran into issues all the way back on lap 1, the final corner of lap 1, and still find themselves up here inside of the top 10.
I don't know if Wagner's that confident that he can make it either. I mean, look at how much Wagner has backed off his lap time. He ran a 55.6 compared to the leader's 54.5s.
Now he's still at least keeping himself within that 32-second bracket. 15 seconds between himself and Rick Ravon. And you know, you talked about making that call to come to pit lane for the fresh tires, having to make that earlier. If you're these guys, and let's say that they are 2 laps short, 1 lap short, do you wait until 2 to go? Do you wait until the white flag lap to make that pit stop?
I mean, here's the thing. If they're waiting this far, they're really confident that they're almost right on their number. They're either confident that they have enough and they're willing to push it as far as they think they need to, or that they think that they're right on their number, but I don't know. It really could be either or. They could either have enough fuel, but in my mind, if I'm short on fuel, I'd want to pit as early as possible just so I can get new tires in the car, just so I can get that running advantage. Where, listen, I know I'm probably not going to win the race, but let me try and have as much time to work my way through this field as possible to regain those positions I lost.
Wow, you saw the 2 there get way out of shape as he got up on that rumble strip, had to make sure he kept that thing pointed in the right direction, and been seeing a lot more movement out of him in these last couple of laps, trying to break the draft between himself and Polo Hernandez on these straights. There you see again, moving way down towards the right side of that straightaway, trying to keep the 0-1 out of his wake.
Now, I know we make some fun of the guys who, I mean, they dip down just a second under one of these cars, just get a little bit of draft, but that actually works here. I mean, obviously just breaking the draft, that could easily knock a few miles an hour off the car, and just seeing the closing rate Polo Hernandez has had in the last few laps, I mean, that is just keeping him at bay.
It ends up coming down between these 2 in the final laps. We may end up seeing some blocking going on, and Matt, you alluded to, it was talked about in the drivers' meeting. These drivers were given the Formula 1 blocking rule. Explain that to us.
So the Formula 1 blocking rule is that you only have 1 movement. So here's the thing. If you see a guy coming behind you and he is coming to your right, you have 1 movement. So you can move to the right to block him off, but if he quickly jukes to the left, you cannot make a double move. You are already committed. Now, if you are trying to make a corner, that makes sense, trying to get back into your lane. But here's the thing, you cannot double move. You cannot hit the guy because that will most likely cause an incident or an accident.
Both these drivers making their first full-time season in the Dark Horse Racing Series, the IndyCar Series, And both of these drivers looking for their first career win under the Dark Horse banner. Do they have enough fuel to make it the final 2.45 miles? White flag in the air. They're coming! The pit road! Matt Wagner, where is he? Can he make it? Will he be able to pass them before they finish their pit stops? He was 15 and a half seconds back when they ducked to pit lane.
Man, I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that at all. I think I
White
would have
flags
pitted
in
a
the
few
air.
extra laps. But that's going to be Wagner's. Wagner's going to run away with this.
Oh boy, let's see how long they spend on pit road. Gas only for Polo Hernandez, gas only for Rick Ravon, but Wagner's already entered into the S's. I don't think there's enough time. They got to get those cars back up to speed. Matt Wagner's already up to speed. I think this definitely is going to be the 11's race to win. That strategy played all the way back in the second stint to save that extra lap of fuel. Oh my God, yeah, right down the back straightaway side by side. This taking place 7 seconds behind the race leader.
Now it's really just a battle of who would have won the race if they stayed out. And you see, you've got Ravon has the preferred line, but Apollo had the kind of momentum. Looks like he's got more momentum going here. Ravon's going to have the preferred line once again. Someone's got to lift.
Out of turn 7 for the final time, Matt Wagner's gonna find victory lane this season at Watkins Glen. Let's drop back to second place off the final corner. Looks like Rick Ravon by maybe half a car length gonna get it over Polo Hernandez.
Even though his strategy didn't work out perfectly, it's still a good day for Nick DeGroot. I mean, here's the thing, P4 and on the lead lap. I mean, that is much, much better than he had last season. And again, that is just good momentum to keep going forward on.
And first car to finish a lap down, but with a top 5. How about George Anzaldo? And Wagner, it was all the way back in the second stint, I do believe, when he started backing down his pace that he saved that extra lap. And the key thing was he managed to keep the 2 race leaders within 32 seconds. I don't think that Rick Ravon grew any more than 16 seconds between himself and Matt Wagner. That's about half the time that it would have been for a full trip down pit road without even a pit stop.
You know, I'm actually seeing a lot of these guys who are out of fuel here. I don't know how many laps these guys have. I don't even know if Stafford has even crossed the line to complete his current lap. I don't think he'll actually finish. I think he'll DNF.
You're right. That car is still coasting through turn 6.
And you can't get many assistance
to complete his lap.
That's it. You really can't get many assistance without getting instant points. I think he will probably go down as a DNF here. He will still be probably P9, but that is yikes.
On Moskowitz back there in the 4, I thought maybe he might be running out of fuel. I think he's okay. And Matt Wagner.
Kerry Corley's the same way. A lot of guys are just so close on fuel. That shows you how much they really just kind of cut the edge. I heard Stafford over looks like race radio saying he was banking on the leaders having enough to make it. So he was trusting their judgment when both the leaders ran out. It was, I don't have enough fuel to finish this race.
And Matt Wagner, sitting here at the start-finish line, just past the start-finish line, he didn't have any fuel left. He actually had to get a little bit of an assistance from Rick Ravon to even get back here to the start-finish line. So no victory burnouts for him, but he will be hoisting the trophy at the end of the day. So that's at least a little bit of solace. And I think, actually, when we looked there, I think Rick Ravon actually did a little half burnout for Matt Wagner, saying, hey, I got the fuel to do a burnout for you, even though you don't.
But just, look at that. That is just consistency. We never go into one of these road course races really kind of picking Matt Wagner to be the one to win the race. We always know he's going to be around the top 3. He's going to get a good finish here, but we never really pick him for the winner. And that's just huge for Wagner.
You know what really is surprising me here, especially the fact that this is such a young season, is the fact that there has been a lot of drivers that have started out the season great. All of a sudden, they are finding hard luck. On the flip side, drivers that start out in the first 2 or 3 races with the hard luck, all of a sudden, they're finding the consistency. And that's why the points have been so close as they have.
And that's what's made it so difficult to really pick a favorite here for the series. And just kind of, you got to look back at Matt Wagner's kind of last season, and he was one of the guys in the points battle early in the season, and then somewhere around mid-season just kind of fell apart. This is kind of a different story. At the beginning of this season, he's been kind of back in the points, hasn't really been competing, but this win will definitely kind of almost throw him up into the competition.
Yeah, last year, Matt Wagner had bookend wins on the season, won the opener at Auto Club and the finale in the Indianapolis 500. And this is actually going to, I believe, I'll have to double check on this, but I believe this is actually Matt Wagner's first road course win under the Dark Horse banner. So a little bit of history being made for him personally as well here today. Rick Ravon and Polo Hernandez, though, great battle there for the lead and then eventually for second on that final lap. They're going to finish on the podium. Rick Ravon will undoubtedly be taking the points lead into next week's race at Homestead, Miami. Nick DeGroot there in fourth and George Anzaldo in fifth, as we mentioned. Eric Peterson, good run for him. A nice comeback for him after early damage sustained. He's going to be sixth. Jim Brooks continues his consistency with seventh. Charles Teed, Bronson Stafford, Gary Corley, other drivers that we mentioned that had issues during the course of this race. They'll at least salvage top tens here today. And you were right, Bronson Stafford, he did lose a lap there since he didn't make it back to the start-finish line. So instead of the last car one lap down, he's the first car 2 laps down, but still in the ninth position.
I actually did a little bit of digging back. I mean, Matt Wagner's last road course win actually looks like it was in season 2 at Donington. That was his last road course win 2 seasons ago, so that's huge for him.
Definitely is. Great job for him. You see the drivers back here that had issues that really weren't able to overcome them. And then Henry Bennett, really no issue of his own. Connection problems from the pole, dropped to dead last. About 15 laps in, he finally got back into the server, was able to move his way up past a couple of DNF drivers, Gail Brooks and Mike Tellier, to finish in 15th, but obviously not what he was looking for when he led the field to green.
Well, that's not good. It looks like I'm on the bottom of the points. Got to start the car.
It's a great 18th place finish. Good job.
much effort.
Let's see if we can talk with some of our podium finishers here tonight after a wild one at Watkins Glen. See if we can talk first with the guy who brings it home third place. It's his second podium, I believe, on the season, and that's Polo Hernandez. Hey, Polo, it's Matt and Seth up here in the FRM booth. You got us?
Yeah, I got you guys.
Man, good run for you here today. We saw you putting the pressure on the 2 there in the closing stages, then the 2 you having to duck onto pit lane. I mean, just how short were you? Could you have possibly been able to make it maybe a couple of corners short and coast that thing to the start-finish line, or was there no way you could make that final lap?
No. I didn't have any opportunity to make that final lap. I needed 1 lap of fuel exactly. To be honest, it was like 2.6 liters, and I don't know how much of gallons is that, but exactly was a lap of fuel that I needed, and that cost me the second. Well, the win of the race, but I mean, after 3 DNFs in a row in New Hampshire, Chicagoland, and Kentucky, this is a great result for me.
So, Polo, I've got to ask.
Yep.
Do you think this race would have had a different outcome if you came down maybe 10 laps earlier, took just a gallon of fuel, and ended up maybe taking new tires and trying to run down Rick? Or do you think Rick had enough to save that 1 lap of fuel and possibly make it to the end?
I was thinking about that, to come to the pits like 5 laps earlier or 10 laps, I don't know. But my mentality was on catch Rick and Matt, and then try to save fuel. But I didn't try to save fuel. Sorry. I mean, my mentality was just on get the podium because I needed that result.
One thing that we talk about at road courses, doesn't matter what road course it is when you come up on traffic, sometimes it depends on where you catch them and to how much time you gain or lose to the driver that you're trying to battle. How difficult was it getting around traffic here today? Because obviously with a lot of issues that took place for drivers, the field was pretty spread out.
I mean, it was not that difficult because I know a lot of these guys were racing. They are very gentle. If they are not fighting with you, I mean, in the traffic, he will let you go. Because I mean that doesn't make sense if you are lap down and you try to fight with the other guy that is in the lead lap. It doesn't make sense. But it was not that difficult. But there was a moment that 2 guys crashed in the pit entry, and I was like, "Oh my god, where I have to go?" And I went through the middle, and that was the only time that I got scared in the traffic.
You made it through. You bring it home with a third place performance, and as you allude to, it's nice to see you get another good run here after the hardship you've had in the last couple of weeks. Polo, is there any sponsors you'd like to shout out, or any people you'd like to thank?
I like to thank my father. He was always watching me. He was in the other room watching the TV. I'd like to thank him and my friends. I don't know who is watching on the stream.
Well, that's Polo Hernandez. Third place here today at Watkins Glen. Congratulations on a good finish there, Polo. Well done.
Thank you so much, guys.
Let's see if we can now get the guy that he was battling for the race lead and then eventually on that final lap for second place. Guy who dominated this race up until the very end, Rick Ravon. Hey, Rick, it's Matt and Seth up here in the FRM booth. You got us?
Hey, what's going on, man? I got you.
Man, we talked about the top of the program. We thought this was going to be a fuel strategy race. So close to picking up your first win on the season. You've been so consistent this year. Just how close was it of maybe possibly being able to stretch it that final lap, or did you absolutely have to pit that time?
Well, unfortunately, when I had to go in for the final stop, well, the second, as it turned out, the second to the last stop, I looked at how many laps were left and I went, oh no, we're going to be a lap short. So from that point, I had to short shift and, clutch it and do whatever I could to try to make, I knew the Polo was going to run me down because, he's just so fast and I was going to lose a lot of time. But once he got to within I'd say about 2 seconds, I knew he was going to get the draft soon. So then I decided to turn it back up. But as it turned out, we were about, I think, 3 to 4 tenths of a gallon short. When I came around to take the 2 to go, I looked down and I saw 1 gallon left. And when I came around, I had, I think, 4 tenths left. And I said, yeah, I'm not going to make it around another time. Dang it. So I had to pit. But I was surprised to see Polo pitted too. I thought he could make it. And at that point, I thought, okay, this is cool, man. It's going to be a race out of the pits, and this is going to be a race for the win, splash and go. And, that's what it was between us. But dang it, that Matt Wagner, he snookered us, man. That was awesome.
So, Rick, I'm going to ask you the same question I asked Polo. If you would have pitted about 5-10 laps sooner, took fresh tires, do you think you could have outran Polo?
Well, it's a possibility. I mean, the Gould Charge did have pace today. We were pretty quick. So, and I did pull away from him in the early going. So, I mean, it's possible, but you never know. Maybe Polo was holding back. Maybe he had something in reserve. Maybe he didn't show his hand yet. I really couldn't tell you, but I think we would have had a real good shot. Yeah.
Well, you're nonetheless going to be taking the points lead, it looks like, into Homestead, Miami. Give the viewers at home a little bit of an idea. We talked about the fact that with this configuration of Watkins Glen, it's really fast. We've got the front stretch. We got a theoretical back stretch. We got a very fast carousel there off of that back stretch area. You talked about clutching, saving fuel. Where are some of the key spots where you're really able to do that?
Really, it's through the carousel. You're able to clutch and kind of coast through there and brush onto the brakes. Dump it down into fourth gear and then pick up the power coming off. That's really the main place where you could save fuel. Any other corner, really, you kind of have to get on the power at the apex. And, I mean, other than maybe leaving it in sixth or fifth gear instead of third, there's really no way that you can save fuel in the other corners, to be honest with you.
Well, nonetheless, Rick, your 6th straight top 10 finish, your 5th top 5 finish on the season, points leader heading into next week. Congratulations on that. We're going to turn the mic over to you now for some thank you sponsors and shout-outs.
All right. I want to thank my sponsor, Gould. As if they pay me, right? Oh, I wish. I want to thank the Lord. I want to thank Jesus. I love you so much, Jesus. And I want to thank the drivers. I want to thank you guys. I want to thank, FRN for broadcasting the race. All the drivers just did such a great job. And, the back markers, those guys that just didn't have it tonight, they were all so courteous. I want to say hi to my wife. I love you, Alana. You are the most wonderful woman in the whole entire world. I want to say hello to my 2 daughters, Zoe and Mila. I love you guys, and hopefully you guys tuned in from about 40 miles away from me. Oh, and one last thing. I want to thank the guys that put this league together. This league is awesome. Totally awesome, dude.
That's Rick Ravon, P2 here tonight at Watkins Glen International, and your new points leader heading into next week at Homestead, Miami. Congratulations, Rick.
Thanks so much, Seth. See you guys later.
And let's see if we can talk with the guy that went to victory lane here today on the fuel strategy call. Let's dial up Matt Wagner in victory lane. Hey, Matt, it's Matt and Seth up here in the FRM booth. You got us?
Oh, I got you loud and clear there, buddy.
Well, man, I'll tell you what, up here in the booth, we were crunching the numbers, trying to figure out who could make it. I saw you back in the pace down there on that second stint. Obviously, you expected this thing to come down to fuel, but did you expect it to be as close as it was?
Yeah, according to my calculator, I had .2 remaining toward the end. That was really, really cutting it close because by the end of the race, I ran out of fuel on the backstretch.
Now, Matt, I remember back at Road America, you're kind of talking about having some wheel issues. No wheel issues tonight, which is nice to see. But obviously, this really aged your championship point standings. Do you think this is going to age going into next week?
I hope so. I haven't looked at the schedule. I don't know what's the next track. You guys are fairly good on stats.
You got Homestead, Miami next week.
Oh boy,
oval, not road course.
Okay, you know what? I actually really enjoy that road course, and they don't iRacing. I wish they would schedule it. But anyway, I knew as soon as that last stop, he wasn't going to make it because he had to save 2 laps of fuel, and I was 1 lap short. So I started clutching it during the carousel. I'm sure you guys were seeing it on the replay there because it worked out. I'm very happy. I'm excited, man.
Well, one thing that definitely kind of played a factor into who some of our front runners were going to be and some of our front runners that we expected run into trouble was that incident on the very first lap off the final corner, and you were right behind that. We talked moments ago with Polar Hernandez, and he said, man, that really scared him. Just how close were you to being involved in that, and how much of a heart-stopping moment was that?
I went back and looked at the replay. That was very close. Whoa. I almost made contact with Schaus. I swear I was like probably about a foot right off his front wing for him taking me out. And also, I feel bad for Bennett. He had a little bit of connection issues, and by far, he is the class of the field on road courses, and everybody looks up to him.
Well, we talked about, Matt, the fact that the first couple of races of the season, not quite the performances that you wanted, but man, you've really turned it around here the last couple of weeks. You now find victory lane for the first time here in Season 4. Congratulations on that. Matt actually went back and looked through the stats. So your last road course win back in Season 2, so nice to see you break that winless streak as far as the road courses are concerned. Now we're going to give you the opportunity for some victory lane. Thank you, sponsors and shoutouts.
Oh, yes. I'd like to thank HyperX, LMC Gear, Troy Lee Designs, my Area 51 team. Shout out to them, my whole team. Jim, a good finish in 7th. We're pretty proud of him. And of course, Dark Horse, who makes these things come together. And I really appreciate their time and effort. And you guys and your backgrounds, your history is phenomenal. Your broadcasting is phenomenal. Keep up the good work.
That's Matt Wagner may not have had the fuel to do a burnout, but he definitely has the adrenaline to be able to celebrate down there in victory lane. His first win on the season here tonight at Watkins Glen International. Congratulations, Matt. Best of luck next week at Homestead.
Thanks, guys. Beer's on me.
What he doesn't know is that he just made an offer, but he cannot take back.
You can have mine. Anyway, Matt Wagner with the victory, of course, as we mentioned. He started out the season last year with a trip to victory lane, the season opener. Waited a little bit longer here to be able to pick up his first win on the season, but obviously a 2-time winner last year, and as mentioned, there's a bunch of guys all of a sudden. Nick DeGroot with his win last week, Wagner here this week. They're starting to now jump up there into the top 5, up into the top 3 in the point standing, joining Rick Ravon and Robert Maleska III that have been up there pretty much the entirety of the start of the season. The new faces starting to jump up there. This points battle for the championship, even though we're not even to the halfway point, it's definitely heating up.
I mean, we definitely see there's a lot more different winners than last season. And I mean, even with the track kind of combos that they've had this season, it's similar to last, but just the upgraded competition over last season, it is just leagues ahead. I mean, just seeing you got Nick DeGroot getting his mojo back. You've got a bunch of new guys coming in. We've got existing guys, kind of the Brooks family there, but really just kind of stepped up their game this season. It's amazing.
Definitely is. I mean, right now they've actually updated the point standings. 35 points separate the top five. Rick Ravon, now the new points leader, 24 points over Maleska the third, DeGroot, Wagner, and Henry Bennett. That's your top five. Polar Hernandez with his runner-up finish tonight jumps up 4 spots to 8th. Eric Peterson finishing just outside of the top 5 and 6th. He jumps up 4 spots to 10th. So a lot of moving and shaking going on here at Watkins Glen. And if I remember correctly too, last year when we had that fuel strategy race, Watkins Glen played a big part as well into drivers gaining and losing spots in the standings. So no doubt about it, it's one of those marquee tracks where you definitely have to keep an eye on who's doing good, who's doing bad, because later on down the end of the season, those that are in contention, those who are not, you could actually maybe look back at Watkins Glen and say, yeah, that definitely played a part in it.
Tell you the big equalizer is going to be Long Beach. A lot of different drivers have a lot of different opinions on that, but I think that's really going to shake up the points.
Now, what are we thinking for next week for Homestead Miami? Because so far this season, we've run a number of ovals. We had back-to-back mile-and-a-halfs in Chicagoland and Kentucky 2 and 3 weeks ago, respectively. Homestead Miami, a spacious track, a lot of grip, multi-groove. What are we expecting there?
I expect a lot of side-by-side racing, kind of more or less what we saw at both Kentucky and Chicagoland, just on a faster and kind of a more expanded pace. Think of Michigan in a way, but a slower Michigan, but we're faster in Kentucky.
It's going to be interesting to see if maybe we'll get our 5th winner on the season. So we got our 4th here tonight with Matt Wagner going to victory lane at Watkins Glen International. Thank you to everybody that tuned into our broadcast here this evening. We hope that you guys enjoyed it. Matt, appreciate you joining the booth for this one. I know you wanted to go out there and turn some laps here at Watkins Glen, but really great to have your knowledge up here in the booth of what these drivers were experiencing here in this road course race.
Oh, it's always nice to be talking down to your competitors when you know if you went back out on track, you'd probably just dump it in one.
Was not going to mention that, but nonetheless, you mentioned it for me. Once again, though, thanks to everybody that tuned in tonight. Hope you guys join us next Wednesday night as we're going to bring you coverage of Race 7 at Homestead Miami Speedway. But once again, congratulations to Matt Wagner on the win here tonight. Once again, thank you to Matthew Rodriguez for joining me in the booth, and we'll see you guys next Wednesday as we continue on the schedule for the Dark Horse Racing Series presented by Troy Lee Designs. You've been watching another broadcast this evening courtesy of the Flat Out Racing Network.
This broadcast is the copyrighted work of Flat Out Racing Network and may not be rebroadcast, retranslated, or used in any form without the express written consent of Flat Out Racing Network and iRacing.com Motorsports Simulations. Flat Out Racing